Let me introduce you to Pastor Dutch Sheets. This is the guy on screen here. He claims to be a prophet of God, and he is a full-blown member of the Trump religion. Now, there's a political cult behind Donald Trump that goes around and screams about how great he is all the time and everything, but there's also a religious movement behind the guy. It's beyond just fervent love for Trump. It is now into, they believe him to be a Messiah territory. No joke. Matter of fact, I covered this fairly recently on my main channel, but there's this book right here, President Donald J. Trump, the Son of Man, the Christ. This book states the premise behind the argument that Donald Trump is the new Messiah. And I'm probably going to be reading this book at some point on one of my streams, probably my Telltale Reads YouTube channel. So sub there if you want to see more of it. But as I was saying, Dutch Sheets is one of the leaders, one of the pastors in the Trump religion, okay? I just want to introduce you to the guy if you've never heard of him, because I don't talk about him terribly often. This one is from early July 2021. This is like when COVID was going on. People were supposed to be taking it pretty seriously, but you know the members of the Trump religion weren't. So listen to what Dutch Sheets has to say about the goings-on related to COVID.
And it's God's timing, and he's now bringing this anointing, and signs and wonders are going to start following this quickly. I know of 3 situations personally of people that were raised from the dead by a doctor during COVID. One of those people went into the room after the person died with COVID. One of those people, the death certificate had already been signed. And this person was raised from the dead. Now, they can't talk about this.
Isn't it convenient how he never produces any evidence for this kind of claim? Isn't it convenient how he uses words like they, some ambiguous authority, or some group of people that he never specifies who it is, never gives us names, never talks about who they are or what they know or what they're doing or any of that stuff? That's called weasel words. It's always about some ambiguous group, some authority group that he's talking about that nobody can actually identify, and that are either out to get you or they're the heroes of the world. In this case, he's talking positively about this ambiguous they. So this must be the positive hero group that he's talking about right now. So this ambiguous, secretive they are a group of doctors, apparently, who are curing people of COVID by prayer, and if they get caught, then they will be fired by some other group of theys. This is full-blown delusional thinking. This is Fantasyland stuff. This guy is completely disconnected from reality. The things that... Just wait, okay? This is the clip that I've covered before. This isn't even the crazy stuff. This is just an introduction. If you want to see the crazy stuff, stick around. Keep listening to this.
They can't talk about this because they could get in trouble, believe it or not, for doing this and for, talking about it. But I'm just saying this is beginning to happen. We're just getting started.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I simply don't believe you. This is absolutely absurd from the ground up. Everything that this dude says is completely absurd. And it's, what's even more absurd than that? The fact that people actually believe the words that come out of this guy's mouth. He's not a nobody. He's a massive televangelist with a lot of sway in the evangelical community. People listen to him. He has his own ministry, his own mega church services that he holds. So earlier I was talking about this Flashpoint video that I've been covering here. This is the most recent one. I think it's from September 15th. Yeah, September 15th. If you're unfamiliar with Flashpoint, it's a TV show on the Victory Network, on like Dish, DirecTV and stuff. It's owned by Kenneth Copeland, right? And they have absolute nutter butters of epic proportions on there on a regular basis. It's nuts. Seriously, it's nuts. Well, Dutch Sheets, of all people, is a regular character on there. And some of the stuff that he had to say on this episode, September 15th, is out of this world, dude. Seriously, out of this world. This is one of the clips from this episode. This is mid-September 2022. I just want to watch a few things that the dude had to say recently. So let's give this a listen, see what he had to say on this most recent Flashpoint.
The love I have for this nation was put there by God. And here's what he said to me. for what I'm going to do in this hour in the nations of the earth.
Yeah, by the way, he says he speaks for God, and God speaks directly to him. So he has given himself the responsibility of communicating the Almighty's words from God himself to the lowly peasant, to everybody.
The harvest that I am going to reap, I must have this nation. And you're going to help me get her back. That's what he said to me.
So God has plans for the United States, and the Flashpoint audience is going to help God take the country back. Seems to me God could just snap his fingers and take it back if that's what he wanted, right? God is only all-powerful to these people when it's convenient to them. When it's inconvenient, you have to work to help God accomplish his goals. I thought this is a master plan. What happened to the idea that God could execute a plan that he had flawlessly? Whether you liked what God's plan was for you or not, it was going to be fulfilled, period. What happened to that idea? Isn't there even a saying about this? You make plans and God laughs? Isn't that a saying that people use a lot? What happened to God's master plan? Why does he need these poor suckers in the crowd to do his dirty work for him? It's cognitive dissonance left and right. Let me explain what cognitive dissonance is for those who are unfamiliar with this term, or those who are familiar. It was coined by a guy named Leon Festinger back in the 1950s. He wrote a book called When Prophecy Fails, and it was about this UFO cult. When you hear UFO cult, you probably think Heaven's Gate, but this is a different one. This one was called The Seekers, I believe, and they believed that there was an alien race that was in communication with these people, just 2 or 3 specific people, and these people would receive secret messages from the aliens and pass them down to the rest of the group. It was only 40, 50, maybe 100 people at its absolute peak. So this book was a study on this group of people called the Seekers, and this was the coining of the phrase cognitive dissonance. This is the definition of cognitive dissonance. So these people made a claim that the aliens were going to come to Earth and pick them up and fly them away. And after they flew them away on their spaceship, Earth is going to be destroyed, right? Or there was going to be a massive flood on like December 21st or something like that. And they're supposed to be picked up before that happened. And of course, it never happened. So here's where cognitive dissonance comes into it. Cognitive dissonance is a stress that takes place in your mind when you believe something, but you actively see that that thing is not true. It's a stress, an anxiety that you have to grapple with, that you're trying to deal with. Now, people deal with cognitive dissonance, this anxiety. It's caused by a difference between what you believe and reality. People deal with it in different ways, 4 different ways usually. The first way is either they'll just stop believing the false thing and cede to reality, or they start relieving the stress in ways like getting other people to believe the same way that they do. If they can convince others that they're correct, even though they're so obviously completely wrong, then it alleviates that stress, that anxiety that comes along with cognitive dissonance. Or they'll build upon the lore to form out the belief to fit within reality again. So, for example, there's a claim that, Donald Trump won the 2020 election, or the prophets prophesied he's going to win the 2020 election, right? Now, he lost. So there's this cognitive dissonance there. How do they deal with that? You evangelize and convince other people that he really did win, and then you form out a new set of beliefs that make that conform to reality still, despite the fact that everybody around you can see that it doesn't. You start claiming that they cheated and that it was stolen from him, and come up with all kinds of creative ways of making that a more plausible explanation, when in reality, the guy lost, plain and simple. There are other ways of alleviating that stress from cognitive dissonance, but those are the main ways that people deal with it. And we can see that exact thing playing out with this guy right now. Did you hear what he just said? Listen one more time here.
in the nations of the earth, the harvest that I am going to reap. I must have this nation. And you're going to help me get her back. That's what he said to me.
So the belief is that God is in complete control at all times. That's the overarching standing belief. And then they prophesied. They said that God told them that Trump is going to win the election, and then all this other stuff is going to follow naturally from that, right? This is all part of God's plan. Trump's going to win. So now there's a cognitive dissonance. There's a problem in their head that they have to resolve. How do they explain this? How do they warp their story around reality to make it fit? They're going to have to sacrifice a few things. One of the things they have to sacrifice is God's omnipotence and omniscience. He can't be all-knowing or all-powerful for their new story to work. But that's okay. That's okay. They'll work with what they've got, right? So now they're sacrificing God's all-powerful nature and saying, you have to work with us to restore the rightful president. You see how this is working? And they have to bring new people into the movement and convince all of them that they're correct about this thing or that thing. Another way that cognitive dissonance manifests is emotionally. You can clearly see people getting more and more emotionally invested in what's happening. And let me just show you an example. This is actually an end clip, but I want to show it now because it relates what we're talking about here. This is just a few minutes later. Listen to and watch what Dutch Sheets says and does. Remember, he's experiencing cognitive dissonance right now. Watch.
I went to over in the corner and I grabbed a flag we had and I wrapped it around me.
He's describing what was happening when he found out that Trump lost the election, okay? This is the height of his cognitive dissonance. He's been faced with the fact that he was not being truthful or he was not correct. He thought God was speaking to him and he wasn't. This is the height of his cognitive dissonance, that anxiety that was caused by the fact that the things that you believe and reality do not match up.
I laid on the floor and I sobbed, and I knew I was crying with him. I knew we were crying together for this nation, Gene.
Dutch Sheets and God were crying together.
And it became so intense that at one point I said, and I meant this. This was not hype, or I'm not trying to be sensational here. I said, God, please, you have to stop this, because my heart is literally going to break and I'm going to die. And I said, please don't kill me. So for 3.5 hours this happened, and here's what he said to me at one point.
So the guy is faced with such serious cognitive dissonance that at this point he literally feels like he's going to die from a broken heart because he can't match up his beliefs with reality. He doesn't know where he went wrong. This guy prophesied from God that Trump is going to win the 2020 election, said that God gave him this message, and he knows that God is all-knowing and all-powerful. There's absolutely nothing in the world that could possibly stop Trump from winning the election in his mind. And here we sit on the other side of it with Biden in the White House. So how does he grapple with the fact that he was wrong here? This is one of the things that makes me feel like he's genuine. The fact that we can watch the cognitive dissonance play out right in front of us. Like, yes, he's a scam artist. Yes, he's a snake oil salesman. Yes, he's a charlatan. Yes, he pretends to fake faith heal people, pretends to cure their cancer and all that other stuff. Yeah, he fakes a lot of stuff, but cognitive dissonance is a hard thing to fake. And why would you? So I think that the guy is a charlatan and interested in making money, but I think that he's justified this in his head to believe that he's doing it for righteous reasons, and genuinely does believe that he speaks to God directly. Well, keep listening to what he said here. So he says that he was laying on the floor wrapped in an American flag crying with God. They were both crying together. And he was telling God that he was going to die of a broken heart, right?
So for 3.5 hours this happened, and here's what he said to me at one point. And I know this was God. And I could never, ever, ever be convinced this wasn't God. He said, I must have this nation. I must have this nation back.
So here's the fascinating thing about this. This guy is building out a new story now, or at least describing the new story that he built out in the moment that alleviates that cognitive dissonance. Before we continue, I just wanted to mention something. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, you can support me in a few ways. First, there's Patreon. That's probably the best way. But if you want to get something back for your support, you can check out my Teespring. Or you can check out my Telltale Unfiltered channel. I go through long-form, unhinged sermons from all kinds of people, from Hank Kunneman to Greg Locke to Jehovah's Witnesses. So give it a look. Links are in the description. Okay, now back to the video. Not for nothing, and this is a little bit off subject, but I do just want to point out that these tears that he's shedding right now feel a little bit, just a little bit like this little thing right here. You guys remember this when this happened?
Donald J. Trump is now President of the United States. President Obama is the ex-president. And Mr. Trump, for the moment.
And people made fun of that for literally years. Do you remember that? And look at what we've got happening right now.
And I know this was God.
What do you call this? Seriously, this guy made fun of this person for crying. And here he sits with tears in his eyes saying, I know, with flag draped around him, lying on the ground, crying with God, saying, I know God told me this. No one can convince me otherwise. The cognitive dissonance, the hypocrisy, can't even hold a candle to this. This is the thickest hypocrisy and self-deception I've seen in I don't know how long. But if you remember at the beginning of this clip, though, we were watching some of this video of him talking about how God was going to come in and save everybody and fix everything for him, right? Well, let's keep watching that clip because there's a little bit more to it. Check this out.
I'm proud because I know God raised up a nation under him with his heart to spread the gospel of the kingdom of Jesus Christ to all the nations of the earth. And I say to you right now, that is not going to be stolen. Our destiny is not over. He is going to save this nation. And a third great awakening is coming to this nation. And it's going to give us the transformation that we need.
There's more. You think it's over? Keep watching.
Come on! He can do this! He can do this! He can do this!
Talking about God. God can do this. This is obviously an attempt at getting the crowd riled up and to an equal emotional level as him. This is all part of an attempt to alleviate the anxiety that is cognitive dissonance. That is what's happening right in front of us. That's what this whole thing was all about from beginning to end. The entirety of this Flashpoint episode was about how Donald Trump isn't the president, but is supposed to be, and it was part of God's plan, and all these people prophesied it, and it didn't come true, but that's because it was stolen, and blah, blah, blah. It's all part of an attempt to build out this ridiculous narrative that explains why they were wrong when they claim to have heard God's voice on earth. That's what the entire episode was about. Now, I am in the process of covering this episode right now on my Telltale Unfiltered YouTube channel. It's probably already uploaded, or it will be soon. So if you haven't seen me cover this entire thing, like the whole Flashpoint episode beginning to end, then go check it out on Unfiltered. I think it's pretty interesting. But it's honestly sad to see these people like break down in what is very evidently a mental condition that they're dealing with. Cognitive dissonance and anxiety that's induced by their beliefs and reality being in conflict with each other. And I would feel bad for these people if it weren't for the fact that they go out here and they say insane shit like this. This is the Watchman Decree. I covered this a couple months ago, but guess what? They said the Watchman Decree again. They've been doing this a lot lately. If you haven't heard the Watchman Decree, I did a whole breakdown on my main channel. Just listen to a little excerpt of it here. This is like the Pledge of Allegiance that they do. It's a new Pledge of Allegiance, effectively.
Whereas we, the church, are God's governing body on the earth, we have been given legal power from heaven and now exercise our authority.
We've been given legal authority from heaven and now exercise that authority, i.e., we have the authority to do absolutely anything up to and including walking into the Capitol building and carrying Nancy Pelosi out in handcuffs because we were given that legal authority by God. And if you don't like it, then you can take it up with God. We'll send you there free of charge. That's the kind of mindset that they're in right now when they read this. Seriously.
We are God's ambassadors and spokespeople over the earth. Through the power of God, we are the world influencers. Because of our covenant with God, we are equipped and delegated by Him to destroy every attempted advance of the enemy.
When they say our covenant with God, what they mean is the United States is in a new covenant with God the same way that Israel was in covenant with God, except now it's Yahweh and the United States rather than Yahweh and Israel. The Messiah of Israel was Jesus. The Messiah of America is Donald Trump. I'm not joking. I'm not being hyperbolic. If you need a little bit of evidence for that, for what I just said, let me give it to you. We got two main clips that I usually pull out to prove this point. This is Shane Vaughn. He's a leader in the Trump cult. Megachurch pastor, televangelist, pretty well known generally in this movement. This is the first clip that I need to show to establish what I just said. Listen to just the first few seconds of what Shane Vaughn has to say here. This is from November 2021, I believe.
And he wrote down, we are going, he wrote a course to New Israel, New Israel, New Israel. And when they came off the ship, they didn't plant an American flag. They planted the Christian flag.
Talking about the founding fathers when they sailed to America.
On the soil, they dedicated. George Washington knelt and prayed, dedicated America where the Twin Towers stand or stood. That's where America came into covenant with Yahweh, with God, was where the Twin Towers stand.
Complete delusion. None of it's true, obviously. I don't feel I even need to tell you that, but I'm just laying it out there for you. Listen to this one. This one is from, when is this one from? This one's from mid-August 2022, fairly recent. Listen to him justify his position. This is what these other people on Flashpoint believe. That's why this section is in the Watchman Decree. Because of our covenant with God, we are equipped and delegated, blah, blah, blah. Listen to what else Shane Vaughn, televangelist, says about this.
Things that will come into your life that you didn't ask for, you didn't create, you're just anointed for that season, and the evidence of it is on the prosperity of the nation and the people. Donald Trump carries the prophetic seal of the calling of God. He is Joseph. If you are anointed by Yahweh for a specific plan and purpose, you are a Messiah.
Does it get more clear than that? That's why this section is in the Watchman Decree. Because of our covenant with God, we are equipped and delegated by Him to destroy every attempted advance of the enemy. Which means any enemies of Donald Trump, the Messiah, are enemies of these people right here, and they are delegated by God to destroy every attempted advance. That means Democrats, anybody to the left of taking out the homeless for sport, these people and the crowd behind them believe that they've been delegated by God to destroy every attempted advance of these people. No joke. That's where they are at this point. Keep listening to the decree because it gets even weirder.
We decree that America's executive branch of government will honor God and defend the Constitution. We decree.
Completely ignoring the fact that the United States has a secular government. It's supposed to. It's written down in the Constitution that there will be a separation of church and state, but they completely disregard that. Pretend it's not there. In fact, they outright say there is no separation of church and state in the Constitution, which is factually incorrect. It's the first sentence in the First Amendment of the Constitution. But, none of that matters. Actually, maybe the second sentence. Anyway, the point is, it's in there, and they pretend it's not, because they warp reality to be more in line with their beliefs. Otherwise, they have to deal with cognitive dissonance. They have to deal with the stress, the anxiety that comes along with having a belief system that is out of sync with what they see around them.
We decree that our legislative branch.
So they said executive branch at first. That was the president. Legislative is Congress, like Senate and House of Representatives.
Congress will write only laws that are righteous and constitutional. We decree that our judicial system will issue rulings that are biblical and constitutional. We declare that we stand against wokeness, the occult, and every evil attempt against our nation.
This is just insane. This is a full-blown cult. A full-blown cult at this point. And aside from that, it's also a brand new religious movement that believes that Donald Trump is the Messiah of New Israel, a.k.a. America. I mean, we have gone down the rabbit hole at this point. And these are not nobodies. There are millions of people who watch this. Millions of people. We should be concerned at this point. If you disagree with anything I've said so far, let me know what you think in the comments or on Twitter at Telltale Atheist.